Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Nawreen. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. US says Russia cannot win in Ukraine. Moscow says long war ahead. China could hack US critical infrastructure, State Department warns. Debt ceiling deadline is extended to June 5, later than previously estimated, Yellen says. GOP led Texas House to vote Saturday on possible impeachment of State Attorney General Ken Paxton. Police arrest suspect in Turkish house attack in New York. US doctor who treated 10-year-old rape victim faces hearing. So happy, man declared innocent after 33 years in US jail. Elon Musk's brain implant company Neuralink says it has US approval to begin trials in people. Celine Dion cancels 2023-24 shows over health condition. Russian rocket hits Ukraine clinic. FBI files uncover plot to kill Queen Elizabeth. Passenger opens plane door mid-air. Russian court data says US journalist Ivan Gershkovich appeals extension of detention on spying charges. Pakistan to try 33 supporters of former Premier Imran Khan in military courts over recent violence. Biden celebrated LSU UConn champion basketball teams at White House. And Griner Mercury Gate first win behind 13 three-pointers. Aces go 2-0 without coach Hammond. You are listening to Headlines, now news in detail. Russia will not achieve a military victory in Ukraine, and Kiev's forces are unlikely to push back all Russian troops from their territory anytime soon, the United States' highest-ranking military official has said. This war, militarily, is not going to be won by Russia. It's just not. General Mark Milley, chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, said on Thursday. Russia's original strategic objectives, including toppling the government in Kiev, are not achievable militarily. Milley told journalists after the conclusion of a virtual meeting of dozens of countries that are members of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which is also known as the Ramstein Group. There are also hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers in Ukraine, which would make Kiev's objective of recapturing all territory lost to Moscow's forces unlikely in the near term, Milley said. That means fighting is going to continue. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be hard. And at some point, both sides will either negotiate a settlement or they will come to a military conclusion, he said. Milley's assessment adds to a number of forecasts that the war in Ukraine appears set to drag on, with neither side positioned to win a clear-cut victory and no negotiations currently taking place. The US State Department has warned that China is capable of launching cyber attacks against critical United States infrastructure, including oil and gas pipelines as well as rail systems, after researchers discovered a Chinese hacking group had been spying on such networks. A multinational alert earlier this week revealed a Chinese cyber espionage campaign had been aimed at military and government targets in the US. The US intelligence community assesses that China almost certainly is capable of launching cyber attacks that could disrupt critical infrastructure services within the United States, including against oil and gas pipelines and rail systems, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said in a press briefing on Thursday. It's vital for government and network defenders in the public to stay vigilant, he said. The espionage group, dubbed Vault Typhoon by Microsoft, was the subject of an alert issued by cybersecurity and intelligence agencies in the US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, known as the Five Eyes, on Wednesday. Microsoft researchers said Vault Typhoon was developing capabilities that could disrupt critical communications infrastructure between the United States and Asia region during future crises, a nod to the escalating tensions between China and the US over Taiwan and other issues. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said Friday the projected debt ceiling deadline is extended to June 5, 4 days later than previously estimated yet. Yellen renewed her warning in a letter to Congress that inaction on raising the borrowing limit would cause severe hardship. Yellen's latest letter to legislatures on the ex-debt came as Congress broke for the long Memorial Day weekend. She said that the Treasury Department had deployed an extraordinary measure not used since 2015 to get the U.S. financial position to this point. The ex-debt arrives when the government no longer has enough of a financial cushion to pay all its bills, having exhausted the measures it's been using since January to stretch existing funds. Earlier Friday, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said his Republican debt negotiators and the White House had hit crunch time, straining to wrap up an agreement with President Joe Biden to curb federal spending and lift the nation's borrowing limit ahead of the forthcoming deadline. They had hoped to end weeks of frustrating talks and strike a deal by this weekend. Treasury now says the government could start running out of money as soon as a week from Monday, sending the US into a potentially catastrophic default with economic spillover around the world. Anxious retirees and social service groups were among those making default contingency plans as lawmakers left town for the long holiday weekend. The next batch of Social Security checks are due to go out next week. The Republican-led Texas House of Representatives has set a historic Saturday vote to possibly impeach embattled State Attorney General Ken Paxton and suspend him from office, just as some prominent conservatives began to rally around him. Paxton, a 60-year-old Republican, finds himself on the brink of impeachment after years of scandal, criminal charges, and corruption accusations. The House will consider a resolution calling for Paxton's impeachment at 1 p.m. Saturday, according to a statement released Friday by the House Committee on General Investigating. If impeached, Paxton would be forced to leave office immediately. He would be just the third person in the state's nearly 200-year history to be impeached and the first statewide officer since former Governor James Ferguson in 1917. The GOP-led committee spent months quietly looking into Paxton and recommended Thursday that the state's top lawyer be impeached on 20 articles, including bribery, unfitness for office, and abuse of public trust. Paxton has criticized the impeachment effort as an attempt to overthrow the will of the people and disenfranchise the voters of our state. He has said the charges are based on hearsay and gossip, parroting long disproven claims. Police in the United States have detained a man accused of attacking Turkey's diplomatic headquarters in New York with a crowbar and breaking its windows, law enforcement authorities said. The arrest on Friday came amid condemnations from US and Turkish officials. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called on US authorities earlier this week to find the perpetrator, describing him as a terrorist. The New York Police Department identified the suspect in an email to Al Jazeera as 29-year-old Recep Akbiyik. He faces multiple charges, including attempted burglary, criminal possession of a weapon, making terroristic threats, criminal mischief, and menacing, according to a police spokesperson. Turkish news outlets had previously reported that Akbiyik is a Turkish citizen who left Turkey a year ago. His motives remain unclear. Footage shared by the Turkish state-run news outlet Anadolu Agency showed a man dressed in black and sporting a hat bashing the glass facade of the building with a crowbar early on Monday. The facility, a skyscraper close to the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan, is known as the Turkish House. It houses the Turkish consulate in the city and its mission to the UN. The attack came nearly a week before Turkey's presidential election runoff between Erdogan and opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. The Indiana Medical Licensing Board in the Midwestern United States has opened a disciplinary hearing against a doctor after she spoke out about offering abortion care to a 10-year-old rape victim last June. The doctor, Kathleen Bernard, initially told her story to the Indianapolis Star newspaper to illustrate the immediate effects of a Supreme Court decision to overturn the constitutional right to an abortion. The story sparked a national outcry, with abortion rights activists denouncing the hurdles the 10-year-old faced and opponents blasting Bernard for her actions. At Thursday's hearing, the board heard a complaint from Indiana's Attorney General Todd Rokita, a Republican and opponent of abortion rights, accusing Bernard of violating both state and federal law. The complaint seeks appropriate disciplinary action against Bernard. The board is empowered to suspend or even revoke a doctor's license. The Attorney General's office has alleged that Bernard violated Indiana law by not reporting the rape to authorities, as well as federal standards for patient privacy. Bernard has repeatedly and regularly spoken to the press to perpetuate the coverage of her patient's private life, the complaint said. While the patient was never named in any of Bernard's interviews, the complaint accuses Bernard of triggering an intense media search for information about the girl. Bernard and her lawyers, however, have denied any violation of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, the law that protects patient privacy. A California man who has spent 33 years in prison for attempted murder has been declared innocent and freed after it emerged that he was not even at the scene of the attack. Daniel Saldana, now 55, was convicted in 1990 of opening fire on a car leaving a high school football game in Baldwin Park, east of Los Angeles. There were 6 teenagers inside and 2 of them were wounded but survived. The attackers mistook the teens for gang members, authorities said. Saldana, who was 22 at the time of the shooting and working full-time as a construction worker, was one of 3 men charged with the attack. Convicted of 6 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of shooting at an occupied vehicle, Saldana was sentenced to 45 years to life in a state prison. Saldana appeared with District Attorney George Gascon at a press conference announcing his exoneration on Thursday. He said he was grateful to be freed. Elon Musk's brain implant company Neuralink says it's gotten permission from US regulators to begin testing its device in people. The company made the announcement on Twitter Thursday evening but has provided no details about a potential study, which was not listed on the US government database of clinical trials. Officials with the Food and Drug Administration wouldn't confirm or deny whether the agency granted the approval. But press officer Curly Kempler said in an email that the FDA acknowledges and understands that Musk company made the announcement. Neuralink is one of many groups working on linking the nervous system to computers, efforts aimed at helping treat brain disorders, overcoming brain injuries, and other applications. Earlier this week, for example, researchers in Switzerland published research in the journal Nature describing an implant that restores communication between the brain and the spinal cord to help a man with paralysis to stand and walk naturally. There are more than 30 brain or spine computer interface trials underway, according to clinicaltrials.gov. Musk, who also owns Twitter and is the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, said last December that his team was in the process of asking regulators to allow them to test the Neuralink device. Pop icon Celine Dion has cancelled all her remaining shows scheduled for 2023 to 24, saying she was not strong enough to tour as she battles a rare neurological disorder. Last year, the 55-year-old Canadian revealed that her condition, stiff person syndrome, was affecting her singing. "I am so sorry to disappoint all of you once again. And even though it breaks my heart, it's best that we cancel everything until I'm really ready to be back on stage," Dion tweeted. "I'm not giving up and I can't wait to see you again," she added. A statement released by her tour said, with a sense of tremendous disappointment, Celine Dion's Courage World Tour today announced the cancellation of all remaining dates currently on sale for 2023 and 2024. In December 2022, she posted a tearful video on Instagram to say she had recently been diagnosed with stiff person syndrome and would not be ready to start her European tour in February as planned. She said the disorder was causing muscle spasms and was not allowing me to use my vocal cords to sing the way I am used to. Sufferers commonly experience stiff muscles in the torso, arms, and legs, with noise or emotional distress known to trigger spasms. The cancellations will affect her 16-country tour in Europe, which was due to start in Amsterdam in August and conclude with 2 dates at the O2 Arena in London in April next year. Now it's time for global updates. A Russian missile hit a clinic in the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro yesterday, killing at least 2 people and wounding 23 in an attack that President Vladimir Zelensky described as a crime against humanity. Video footage showed a devastated building with smoke pouring out of it and rescue workers looking on. Much of the upper floor of what appeared to be a 3-story building had been badly damaged, as had cars parked nearby. "Another missile attack, another crime against humanity," Zelensky wrote on Twitter. The buildings of a psychological clinic and a veterinary clinic in the city of Dnipro were destroyed. "Only an evil state can fight against clinics. There can be no military purpose in this. It is pure Russian terror," he said. Russia has denied repeated accusations that its soldiers have committed war crimes in Ukraine. A newly released cache of FBI files has revealed a potential plot to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II during her 1983 visit to California. The possible threat followed a phone call made by a man who claimed that his daughter had been killed in Northern Ireland by a rubber bullet. According to the document, that also refers to a bar frequented by the IRA sympathizers. The Queen and her husband, Prince Philip, visited the US in February and March 1983, and the trip passed off without incident. 4 years earlier, in 1979, IRA paramilitaries opposed to British rule in Northern Ireland killed Louis Mountbatten, an uncle of Philip, in a bomb attack. The file states that the man claimed he was going to attempt to harm the Queen by dropping some object off the Golden Gate Bridge onto the royal yacht Britannia when it sails underneath. Alternatively, he would attempt to kill Queen Elizabeth when she visited Yosemite National Park. A separate file pointed out while FBI was unaware of any specific threats against the Queen, the possibility of threats against the British monarchy is ever present from the Irish Republican Army. A passenger opened an emergency exit on an Asiana Airlines flight as it was preparing to land yesterday, the carrier told AFP, adding that the plane landed safely but several people were hospitalized. The plane was carrying nearly 200 passengers as it approached the runway at Daegu International Airport in South Korea, about 240 kilometers southeast of Seoul, on a domestic flight. When the plane was around 200 meters above the ground, a passenger sitting near the emergency exit opened the door manually by touching the lever, the carrier's representative told AFP. The incident caused some passengers to have breathing difficulties and several people were taken to a hospital after the landing, Asiana said. Daegu police told AFP that they had taken in a man in his 30s for questioning over the incident. Wall Street Journal reporter Ivan Gershkovich has appealed a 3-month extension of his detention on espionage charges, a Russian court data website indicated Friday. Gershkovich, a 31-year-old U.S. citizen, was arrested in March while on a reporting trip in Russia. He, his employer, and the U.S. government have denied the charges. A Moscow court on Tuesday extended his detention until August 30. According to the court website, the appeal was filed on Thursday. There was no information whether a date has been set for a hearing. Gershkovich's case has been wrapped in secrecy. Russian authorities haven't detailed what, if any, evidence they have gathered to support the espionage charges. Various legal proceedings in the case have been closed to the media. The state news agency TASS said Tuesday's hearing was held behind closed doors because the reporter was accused of possession of secret materials. The Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday night that Gershkovich's parents, Soviet immigrants living in New Jersey, were visiting Moscow and saw their son during the short hearing. Pakistan's government said Friday that 17 more supporters of Imran Khan would be tried in military courts over recent anti-government violence, bringing the overall number of followers of the former Prime Minister facing military tribunals so far to 33. The development comes amid a government crackdown on Khan's opposition Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party and its supporters over the violent demonstrations that followed Khan's arrest earlier this month in Islamabad. For days, Khan's followers attacked public property and military installations across the country. The violence subsided only after Khan was released on orders of Pakistan's Supreme Court. At least 10 people were killed in clashes between Khan's supporters and police. Interior Minister Rasan Sanaullah Khan, who is not related to the former premier, said that only 33 suspects have been selected for military trials, although police arrested nearly 5,000 of Khan's supporters over the past 2 weeks. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,078.69. The NYSE composite is increased by 102.72 points or 0.69%. Tokyo stock close price is 30,916.31. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 115.18 points or 0.37%. Shanghai stock close price is 30,916.31. The Shanghai index is increased by 115.18 points or 0.37%. Hong Kong stock close price is 18,746.92. The Hang Seng index is decreased by 11.24 points or 0.35%. Bombay stock close price is 62,501.69. The Sensex index is increased by 629.07 points or 1.02%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. President Joe Biden was hosting the NCAA Championship men's and women's basketball teams at separate events. His wife Jill planned to join the celebration for Louisiana State's women's team. After the Tigers beat Iowa for the title in April in a game the First Lady attended, she caused an uproar by suggesting that the Hawkeyes also come to the White House. LSU star Angel Reese called the idea a joke and said she would prefer to visit with former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle instead. The LSU team largely is black, while Iowa's top player Caitlin Clark is white, as are most of her teammates. Nothing came of the First Lady's idea and only the Tigers were invited. Reese ultimately said she would not skip the White House visit. Biden also was welcoming the Yukon's men's championship team later Friday at a separate White House event. The Huskies won their fifth national title by defeating San Diego State 76-59 in April. Brittany Griner and the Phoenix Mercury earned their first win of the WNBA season with a 90-81 victory against the Minnesota Lynx on Thursday night. Diana Taurasi had 23 points and 10 assists, while Griner added 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Phoenix, which finished with 13 three-pointers, hit 11 of 17 threes in the first half for a 57-40 lead. Taurasi had 3 triples and 15 points at the break. The 40-year-old Taurasi finished 40 of 9 from three-point range, giving her 1,300 threes and extending her WNBA record. Sue Bird is second with 1,001. Ariel Powers paced the Lynx with 20 points off the bench. Jessica Shepard and Diamond Miller had 13 points each, and Tiffany Mitchell added 12. For Phoenix, Sug Sutton had 14 off the bench, and Maria Jefferson and Sophie Cunningham each scored 13 points with 3 three-pointers. The Mercury finished 13 of 28 behind the arc, while the Lynx were 3 of 18. Phoenix went 5 of 6 from three-point range, with triples from 5 different players, to open a 27-18 lead after one quarter. Minnesota came within 7 twice late in the third quarter. The Mercury finished 21 of 23 from the free throw line. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV, and also in all European countries and Australia available with the Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago Media Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.